So that then I read the function of the orgasm, and that was the book that really opened up a complete view for me to orgonomy and the development or Reich work. I don't know if there are words to describe the feeling I had when I could see what Reich was talking. And it's a feeling of deep contact, a contact with life, and it gives such a boost to the sense of who you are, and also promotes the contact with nature, with other people. So you feel like you're really a part of something deep that is beyond your control.
Welcome to the A Different Kind of Psychiatry podcast, brought to you by the ACO. I'm Dr. Chris Burritt. Each month, we feature a case presentation, interview, or discussion by one or more of our doctors who practice a different kind of psychiatry. We're interested in your questions and comments, and I would love to hear your feedback. Send an email to aco@orgonomy.org. The best way to help the ACO spread its knowledge is by letting others know about us. If you'd like to be entered into a raffle for a chance to win an issue of the Journal of Orgonomy for yourself or to send to a friend, you can do so by leaving a review, either through Apple or Amazon, and letting us know by email. We will be setting the winner issue 48-2, which includes the articles Life Without Medication by Dr. Dale Rosen, Tourette's Syndrome as a Symptom of Character by Dr. Phil Heller, and There Must Be More to Life by Dr. Peter Christ. If you're interested in attending one of our webinar presentations, you can meet the doctors and join in on the discussion afterwards. You can connect with us and learn more at orgonomy.org or adifferentkindofpsychiatry.com. This episode features an interview with Salvatore Iacobello M.D. Wilhelm Reich's books, The Mass Psychology of Fascism and The Function of the Orgasm, impacted Dr. Iacobello so profoundly that after reading them, his life would forever be changed. I hear from Dr. Iacobello about how he first learned of Wilhelm Reich and his work, and what drove him to pursue learning more about orgonomy and becoming a medical orgonomist. So, Dr. Iacobello, I'm excited to talk with you today. I'm curious to hear about how you ended up where you are. How did you become a medical orgonomist? How did you learn about Reich and orgonomy? So maybe you could just let me and the listeners know, how did it all start?
Well, I think that's a very good aspect of my experience, let's say, to look at. And I think it's interesting you say, how did you become an orgonomist? And I tell you, Dr. Burritt has been a long road, but at the same time, the things have been going fast, and now I'm in a place that I was not even imagining at the time when, for the first time, I thought maybe I would like to be an orgonomist. So, and that was something I would not even dare to think in those terms, because I would think, well, is it ever going to be possible for me to become an orgonomist? So it was something very far away in my mind. But I think it all goes back when I was a teenager, and I started high school. I was my second year of high school. As you know, Dr. Burritt, I I come from Italy. The high school system in Italy is different from the way it is now. It is here. And so in Italy, after middle school, you had to decide what kind of high school you want to go. So that creates some commitment in some way.
So you have to have an idea of where you're going at the end of middle school.
Yes, you had to have an idea where you go at the end of middle school. So sometimes you don't have it, but if you
Dr.
want to,
Iacobello, I didn't know at the end of high school and not even until middle of college what I wanted to do, so I can't imagine.
right. Well, now the system in Italy has changed a little bit. Since when I've been here, there have been some reforms, but the way it was in those days, it was different. More or less, it went back to before the war. That was the school system. So in some way, you had to choose some kind of school, but the major orientation were either you would go to a school that will prepare you for university, or you would go to a trade school of some kind. So, well, I decided to go to a school that would prepare me for the university. So they were in my second year. I started to meet the students who were older than me. They actually were not even students who were going to my same school, but they were from my hometown. So I started to meet mostly university students who were uh, politically involved and also were studying philosophy or literature. So I was spending time with them because my situation was at that time a little difficult because the students of my own age, most of them had gone to professional schools.
I see.
So I found myself a little bit isolated. I couldn't relate to them very much. So I got to meet these older students who, of course, spending time with them, I would learn about different issues, more intellectually challenging issues. So the students I knew were mostly students who were left political spectrum.
Uh-huh.
So some of them were in the Italian Communist Party, or others were even more to the left of the Communist Party. So one evening we were walking and talking, and I hear for the first time somebody saying, "Well, you know what happened to Wilhelm Reich, this daughter, a psychoanalyst who ended up in America, and he ended up dying in prison, but he was actually so advanced that he was talking about this life energy, and he had discovered what the prana was. That was the extent of it. What I heard, although then later on I learned about some of Reich's books that were going around in Italy in that time. This was probably was 1973. Now it's a long time, right? That's like,
I didn't say anything.
but that's my reflection about that. It looks to me like it was yesterday, but it was 1973 or almost.
So there were these older boys and girls talking about philosophy and politics, and they just mentioned, oh, you know what happened to Reich.
Well, the discussion was in general politically involved, and
Uh-huh.
you know So yeah, somebody mentioned about that because these were people who I think they mentioned Reich's book, Mass Psychology of Fascism.
Hmm.
So I found that interesting. My situation was I wanted to learn, I wanted to know, I wanted to read and improve myself. That's what was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So then I eventually, well, I thought, well, maybe I should read this book eventually. Well, I didn't do it right away, but eventually I bought the book. And then I started to read it, and that's kindled my interest
Hmm.
to go into reading other books. I think that what mass psychology of fascism, mostly the first thing I read was the introduction. I found it great. So then I think I must have put the book down, and then I don't know, maybe sometime later I was able to finish the whole book.
Do you recall, Dr. Iacobello, what it was about that book that stood out to you?
Well, I think what stood out to me, and I still remember today, was I think the description of the bioemotional or psychic structure that Reich gives in the introduction when he talks about the different layers of the human emotional structure.
Are
Uh,
you referring to like
I'm
one's
referring,
core and character
yeah,
and
I'm
facade?
referring to the social layer, the superficial layer, to the middle layer, the alma, equivalent to Freud unconscious,
Uh-huh.
and also uh, I'm referring to the core. That's the third layer, the deeper layer, the core. That description really got me. Now, this reading was not really falling on the ear of somebody who didn't know that, that much about psychology or psychoanalysis, because before I got to that, I actually had been starting to read Freud or some other psychology books. So in some way, I I could understand Reich because I've been reading Freud,
Mm.
and I remember reading the interpretation of dreams. That's actually was one of my first books I got as a teenager.
Wow.
The interpretation of dreams, and maybe what's the other book of Freud that is psychopathology of everyday life.
Oh, yes.
I had, and maybe I even read I read already the three essays on sexuality. So I had a clear, yeah, I had some base. Now, of course, I want my understanding of these books was limited at that time. I was starting high school, second year, third year. Although the school I went, being the classical school, I would be introduced at school to the humanities, the study of philosophy by the third year, a lot of history, a lot of literature. So the school was providing me with those tools to be able to move into other readings. And now the thing is, my so in this school, I don't know how it's now, but in those days, the first 2 years, you will have a main professor. The professor being a teacher who has a university degree. So, and you will have a teacher who will teach you uh, Italian, classic Greek, and classic Latin, and also history and geography. They would be under the same teacher.
Oh, wow.
So this teacher who really made a huge impact, I think, in my life, probably I will not be where I am now for these teachers. This tells you how important teachers can be in the life of a
Yes.
student. It is amazing. I need to be very thankful for having these teachers.
What is it exactly that the teacher did for you? How did he help?
Well, she
Or
was.
she?
I was not that strong in writing Italian. Italian, it's difficult in some way. Maybe for me, it was more difficult than English, because for us, Italian is not really the first language. When you go to school, it's like you most of the time you use dialect in your everyday life. So
You mean slang or?
no, it's not slang; it's dialect. Italian dialects, they can be considered different languages.
I didn't realize it was that, the differences was that stark.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I'm from the town of Catania that is in Sicily, and we have the Sicilian language, and actually it's also a written language. And there are works of poetry and literature written in Sicilian. And
Ah,
nowadays they are trying to resuscitate it. So this teacher, what she would tell me was that if I want to learn and I wanted to be good, I had to read. Read, read. That's what the way to do it. Yeah, so I would read. I would buy books and whatever, and they would read. I was doing that. So she made a huge difference from the point of view. That's where my interest for reading came.
uh, well, I mean, what was she motivating? Was she patient? What was it that stood out?
I think she was a tough teacher, and on the other side, I was scared of her. She was tough. It was no nonsense teacher.
Uh-huh.
You don't you didn't mess around
I see.
with these teachers. Were very old school. So no, what was I think it was I wanted to learn and I wanted to be good, so I would listen. So even with all these difficulties, I still would keep at it, and that's actually the thing she would praise me eventually for having a strong will and pursuing
Ah,
even with difficulties and challenges.
wonderful.
So that was. But going back to my first knowledge of Reich and orgonomy, that was what happened. Then later on, I think that the book I read that made a huge difference when I was a little older, maybe 17, in my fourth year of high school. So that then I read the function of the orgasm, and that was the book that really opened up a complete view for me to autonomy and the development or right work. I don't know if there are words to describe the feeling I had when I could see what Reich was talking. And it's a feeling of deep contact with life, and it gives such a boost to the sense of who you are. It also promotes the contact with nature, with other people. So you feel like you're really a part of something deep that is beyond your control.
Yeah.
So that's I think was then what motivated me, because the function of the orgasm also has a lot of biology and medicine, and then there is the followed by the cancer biopathy. I had in the same school you study some biology and you study some physics, even if the main focus is humanities. So I could, in some way, understand what Reich was talking about. And at that point, I think at that point, I started to think that I should go into medical school. Because it looks like my interest was crystallizing toward the philosophy and physics and what is called the epistemology, the study of the philosophy of science.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at that point, I said, well, I should really, if I want to pursue this kind of work, and maybe I want to become an orgonomist, I should become a doctor. So, but that was a big thing. I was somebody who wouldn't even put a foot in a hospital. Not that I was not the kid who would be scared of blood or what. Many times I would cut myself or what, because I would deal with it. But yeah, I was afraid of going to the hospitals, going to visit somebody. I didn't want to know anything about the doctors. I was scared. So, but then eventually I felt, well, I can do it. So when I finished the high school, I went into medical school. But that's still, everything was very vague because I really didn't know what would be the way to get into uh, becoming a medical ergonomist, because I knew I could go into psychiatry, but going into psychiatry doesn't really lead you necessarily to becoming a medical hormone therapist.
Right.
And plus, in Italy, psychiatry was very much neurological oriented.
I see.
Well, was up to, let's say, up to the late 70s, there was really no distinction in Italy, and especially in my university, there was no distinction between neurology and psychiatry.
Ah.
And then there was also the stigma, well, why would you want to go into psychiatry and not really be a real doctor? You want to be a real doctor. That's what some of the bothering.
So, wow, psychiatry was no different than neurology, and yet you're still called not a real doctor, so you got it on both ends.
Yeah, right. It was, yeah, that's how it was.
Did psychiatrists do therapy back then in Italy?
No,
No.
in Italy, psychiatry, that's why it developed it along the neurology side. So psychotherapy or psychoanalysis had never been considered having having any say
Mm.
on from the point of view of medical or scientific validity. So it was really all an unknown world. And it
So
was more unknown when it comes to ergonomy. Well, what do you do to become a medical ergonomist? You know, that you go to the school, to the medical ergonomy school or the specialty in the medical ergonomy.
yeah, did you know anybody in their own therapy or anybody
No,
practice?
I didn't know anybody in their own therapy. I the friends my group of friends were people who also they knew about the Reich. They were interested. We discussed Reich. We were readings. However, we really didn't have any real knowledge of people who were in therapy or of therapists.
Like practical knowledge experience.
Yeah, practical knowledge. So it was very much your theory, but also later on, I came to learn. It was clear that there were some groups in Italy who were uh, more who were doing Reich work, but they were more bioenergetic therapists. So then later on, actually, there I came to know there was somebody in Catania, but he was a psychologist who was in some way trained or doing bioenergetic therapy. But I never met this person, or I never knew that much. But I think my friend, I may have gone to meet him. And then that's when he found out about the journal that
Journal of Orgonomy?
well, they done in a version that was being published by Dr. Camarella. So because there was a time, I think in the late 70s, so also in the middle 80s, Dr. Camarella was in Rome, was publishing the Italian edition of the Journal of Economy. So before that, I've been doing some readings of publications of people who are, who were bioenergetic therapists. There were some publications in Italy. There was one, the name was Pulsazione, meaning pulsation. So I got one issue. I read something about it. It really didn't excite me. That's one I don't think I ever finished reading. Because I could see the difference between reading Reich work and what was in these articles. To me, it didn't look like it was the same thing. So I would feel disappointed.
I see.
So also there would be disappointment there because, well, look, these people are not really doing Reich's work. So then when I saw the journal published by Dr. Camarella, oh, wow, that was, I said, well, this is the real,
This is it?
this is it. This is the real work of Reich. So I got all the issues. I would read them regularly until they were published. So that's I think that was the central moment. That really now I had in some way some connection. It
So did you
wasn't
reach out
just
to him? Did you reach out to the
no,
doctor?
I never reached out to him. I just read the journal. Well, look, he was in Rome. There is
Uh-huh.
the distance factor. And then you to be in therapy, you need to have money. That was my other goal: be in medical school and have a job that would eventually give me the income to be able to be in therapy. So there would not have been any way that I could have afford therapy in those days.
I see.
The distance and the money, and then I would tell my parents I want to go for therapy. They would think,
What would they think?
what's that? They would think that's. They would think I'm going crazy. They would think,
Uh,
that's where they in both directions. They would worry because they would say, "Oh, well, why?" Although my parents may not even had an idea what therapy is about. No, they didn't. That was not part of their world. So it wasn't part of the culture in Italy. Now I think there is a lot of interest in therapy in Italy,
I
actually
see.
more than in this country, probably.
It was just foreign to that
It
area to
was
your
foreign.
parents.
Nobody would go to see a psychiatrist then in the first place unless they would take you there in a straight jacket.
Well, so what did they do if they were depressed or anxious or?
Well, those were not considered as medical problems.
But what did people do?
They would do nothing. They would just deal with it.
Ah,
There will
suffer.
be there's the different ways of dealing. You see, these are not even now. These problems are not part. When I go to Italy, I see it. They are
Hmm.
not part of the knowledge of the consciousness of people. They
Hmm.
I mean, here you hear people talking about bipolar disorder. What? But there, nobody knows about that. That's people. They live their life. They in one form or another.
Uh-huh.
You know, there may be a lot of acting out, and I also think the community, at least the way it was before, we provide people an outlet to deal with their own emotions.
I see.
So people will have the opportunity in some way to talk to other people. They will go
I see.
out. They will have an outlet. I think so. You could be depressed at home, but then you will go out, meet people, do things, and that's something that was easily available. Anxiety and depression very much gets expressed through physical symptoms.
Mm.
So people they express their anxiety, they suffering through multiplicity of complaints.
This might be chest pain or belly pain
Yeah,
or
right. Or any
diarrhea.
other right. You saw that psychosomatic manifestations.
I see.
So they so where in fact, how do I know about that? Because well, I started to practice as a family doctor in Italy. So I would see a lot of these. I would see a lot of complaints and symptoms that really didn't have a real base that couldn't really be interpreted or a cause could be found.
Mm.
So you would take, especially women. I remember that. So they would bring these complaints to you, and then they would go through examination and tests, but there will be never a solution. But if the family doctor will say anything, but the thinking will not be based on terms of anxiety or depression, but will be based in terms of, well, you are a nervous person. You think too much. You need to relax. But there will not be the recommendation of going to see the psychiatrist. You have to consider in those days there were no SSRIs, so you was nobody really will feel wanting to start the patient on an antidepressants to the risk of tricyclics. So that was seen as a family physician to start the tricyclic was seen like a huge step forward
Oh.
to the point.
So for the audience, what you're saying is they didn't have Prozac and Lexapro that are much more tolerable to the average
Right,
patient. We
right.
used the You used the older medicine, the tricyclic antidepressants that had a much more side effects and difficulty with management in terms of how it affected your heart or so forth.
Yeah, yeah. And also, it was you wouldn't feel comfortable to diagnose depression as a family physician. So, and because people wouldn't go to the psychiatrist in the first place. So,
So nobody did it.
right. As I said, unless somebody will be brought to the psychiatrist due to serious problems.
I see.
So,
Suicide, you mean?
not as much suicide. That wasn't much of a problem in the consciousness of people in those days, but more uh, acting strange or bizarre,
I see.
violent behavior becoming out of control.
I see. So, Dr. Iacobello, we kind of fast forwarded to beginning medical school to practicing as a family doctor. During that period of medical school and in graduation, were you considering going into psychiatry? Were you
Oh,
following up with orgonomy?
well, once I think the time I got to read the Italian version of the Journal of Orgonomy, the name was Scienza Orgonomica. in orgonomic science. So that was when I was on my third year of medical school. Now, in Italy, medical school is 6 years. So the other thing I did actually before I started medical school, I went to meet in Rome a psychologist who had been doing bioenergetic work, and his name was De Marchi, and he was considered as one of the first introducer of Reich and the bioenergetic therapy in Italy. So I went to meet him to ask for advice, not because I was thinking to get into therapy. I couldn't, as I said.
Right.
So I met him briefly. He indeed suggested me, he said, yes, you have to go to medical school. So I think that was something good he did. He actually encouraged me to go into medical school if I wanted to do that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, we met for 15 minutes. I think I found him superficial in some way, not really that much interested in connecting with me. And he was the one who actually published that journal, Pulsazione, Pulsation. So, and that was published not for that long. Then they stopped publishing it. So then I was in medical school. I had this idea that maybe I would like to get into orgonomy, wondering if how that was going to happen, and also wondering, did I have personally what it takes to become an orgonomist.
Uh-huh.
So practically, what I was isolated in those days. I didn't really have that many people I could share my interest in Reich with, because also those friends who initially had introduced me to Reich, then we in some way we were not that much in touch any longer, and they also were not that much interested.
They moved on.
They moved on. Yes, they moved on. So basically, yeah.
It sounded, Dr. Iacobello, like you took a big leap of faith, you know?
Yes, in some way, yes, it was a big leap of faith. And by the way, these I'll call them road posts that gave me the motivation, the encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they gave me the reality base to work to achieve my goal. So the next one was when in 1984 the college organized an orgonomic conference in Europe, in Munich.
Which college?
The American College of Orgonomy.
I see.
I think through Dr. Camarella, that conference was organized,
Uh-huh.
and I was able to attend it. Yeah, that was something that I really wanted to do, and if I would not have done it, it would have really let down for me. So I went to the conference. It was in 1984, and it was in Munich, Germany. So we went there for 1 week, and that was when I actually met Dr. Camarella for the first time, and then I met Dr. Konya. He was one of the speakers, as well. There was Myron Sharaf, and there was Dr. Schwartzman.
So what was this experience like for you?
Oh, it was great because for the first time I was hearing people who were talking about orgonomy, and they seemed to know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So it was really enlightening. I felt like, well, this is the place where I belong.
Wonderful.
This is really great. Dr. Camarella, I didn't speak to him that much, but that gave me the opportunity to come to know the college. And know that there was a possibility to get training and how to pursue it.
Uh-huh. You weren't alone as much anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't alone as much any longer. Yeah. Yes. So then at that point, I was able to get the Journal of Orgonomy and other publications uh, in English, published by the college. Now, my English was not that great. So,
Is learning English standard when you were going through
you don't
school?
necessarily have to study to learn English. They give you, you can take. Well, in my school, the high school I went, you had English for the first 2 years.
I see.
Then they drop it out. It's only the next 3 years are mostly focused on.
That's how Spanish was for me. You can take it a few years, but then it's not part of
But
it.
then in medical school, you don't have to take
I see.
English. Although I took courses on my own, private courses, so I had to struggle to do the reading, right? So, but eventually I kept improving.
What was the step that guided you into the direction of becoming a medical ergonomist from after graduating medical school?
Well, the main step was because now here there was another step. There was a huge step, probably the most difficult I have done because up to that point I really have not done anything. I've been reading or talking to people and try to expand my knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and learning medicine and become a doctor. But now, what the main obstacle
If
was
I can
what
interrupt you for a moment, that is a big step.
well, it wasn't for me a bit. So, you know, I never was concerned about that. I saw that as well. This is something I do. That's never concerned me.
Uh-huh.
In some way, that's what my parents were surprised about that. When I expressed the desire of going to medical school, they didn't know what to make of that. It was like, yeah, I never had a doubt about it that I was going to. I never had a doubt about it, but they never told me that they didn't know what was going
They
to
were in the
happen.
dark.
Yeah, right. But they supported me to the end because they wanted me to do that. So that wasn't the problem. So now the major problem was how to get to the United States
Ah,
and get the training. Now I was starting to work as a doctor, so my earning capacity was still low. Even I cannot be in the United States if I'm working, and I need to work because I didn't have much resources. Essentially, my father was coming from generations of farmers, or Italian farmers or peasants. That's what's in our blood. All my cousins were the people who were working the land.
what was the land passed down from generation to
Some
generation?
land, yes, some land, yes. By the also, some land would be bought. So that's always one thing. You will work hard to be able to buy land.
I see.
So we didn't have much means. I had to really be very aware of my lifestyle. Not that I would want to spend money, a lot of money, but I didn't have money to throw away.
Right, right.
So eventually, uh, the idea came up that the best way to do it would be for me to try to get into a residency in the United States, because I was researching how can I do this, what can I do to work as a doctor in the United States. So it comes up that you have to do a residency, but first you have to pass this exam. At that time, the exam was the ECFMG. So I knew I had to pass that exam, and then that will allow me to come to the United States. So I did that. I studied hard. I took the exam. I passed the medical parts of the exam. I didn't pass the English part, even if the exam was in English. So I had to retake the English language part. So then after that, I was able to apply for residencies, etc. So that's then is all a new chapter.
Dr. Iacobello, did you have any interest in the United States aside from training with the American College of Orgonomy?
I would say no.
That's what it came across like. So that's amazing, you know?
Yeah, I would say no, because as I told you at the beginning, my my political orientation was leftist, and from that point of view, the United States was seen as the capitalist world at its highest expression was the enemy in some way.
Wow.
All right, so why would I, in any other way, I want to come to the United States?
So let me just make sure I have this clear. So you had to save up a bunch of money that you didn't have. You had to take a bunch of tests that weren't easy, and you had to go into enemy territory to pursue learning about medical organomy.
Right. Although I think we should not. That's not probably there was also another side that maybe I was not that much aware of it, or I would admit to myself, where there is the fascination of being American, seeing and all the great things, right?
Yes.
So I think that part was there too. But there was also the other part. Would I come to the United States if it were not for that? Probably no. I could have been going to England or France or Germany or whatever, how the way many people do.
But you're far
I
from to go to the United States. That's far from your family.
right, well, that was the other major obstacle. My parents were very unhappy now about this, especially my mother, who still now, after all these years, if when I call her, we get into this discussion, not in the sense of what made me come here, but the discussion is more about whatever it's going on here with me and the problems. Let's say now, I have not been able to go to Italy for 2 years. So then
with travel restrictions currently.
yeah, right. So she brings that up. She said, "Why did you have to go there? You didn't have to go to that country there." So yeah, that was the major obstacle, and that's in some ways something I was dealing with. It doesn't bother me when the subject is not brought up, was not brought up. But of course, when we talk about that, I will have feelings about that.
I see. So I'm really curious to hear when you finally did do all that hard work to get to United States and you began therapy for yourself. How did it compare with your ideas about after reading Reich and this other scientific journal? I'm so curious what that was like for you.
Well, I think the initial reaction was great for me. I think I had a great response to the first sessions. I felt really relieved, and I could feel that this was something I never felt, that the sessions were really moving a lot of emotions inside me. But the main thing was to be able to really let go of those emotions that who knows for how long they've been accumulating there, and the frustration and the misery that had been going on.
Did you have a sense of that when you were reading Reich and his work in terms of the idea of becoming a medical ergonomist to help other people, of your own feelings that have been locked away? Did you have a sense of that?
I had the sense of that. I knew that, but at the same time, there were differences between what I thought or imagined that could have been, and what really it was like.
Ah,
Because I think my feeling was that it would have been more similar to psychoanalysis, and there would have been a more talking and the interpretations than what my experience has been, mostly focused more on feelings and getting in touch with your feelings.
mm,
So there is that difference, but I don't think that I see that as a loss, because actually the experience of therapy, for many respects, has been greater than I could ever imagine.
yes.
So, it's. I think that's. I think it's something that we could really talk for some time. For to look at the
Well, I think for
between
years.
expectation, and then what the actual experience is. Because I think in some way it cannot be helped when you read Reich, as much you read it, as well you read it, or how many times you read it. But I think it cannot be helped to have some distortions, because you really bring in it your background knowledge, your ideas of the world, and I think it's easy to distort it, let's say, in a mystical way, but also the mechanistic part can play a role.
Yeah.
Because you see, I think I was very, as for science, I was very mechanistically oriented, in the sense that I look at facts, experiments, and results. That was my understanding of science, what science needs to be. So then, in some way, when I faced the psychiatry on the one side and therapy on the other side, where in some way I expected the orgonomy was going to be like that.
Yeah.
The way, there was a clear path. You do this, and
You do
there's
XYZ.
right. The result. You do this, and you get this, and that's why you do this. But then it wasn't like that. So that's. I think that's can take actually a longer time to be able to start to think in more, I will use the word functional terms, but also I would say to be able to think in a fluid, more plastic ways, and see that things don't necessarily to be measurable and quantifiable and hard data.
Dr. Iacobello, do you remember any examples that came up when you first started to learn more about orgonomy and medical orgone treatment? What, when you said that you had this sense of, being a little bit mechanical, you do X, Y, Z, and then you have this effect. Were there any examples that stood out that then you started to realize that was more functional, that it wasn't mechanical?
I cannot give you a specific memory of this, but I think I know in general. I would realize that when I would hear colleagues or teachers talking about things that I was expecting to be in a different way. Based on my knowledge, I would expect I would obtain some answer, but then I would see that indeed the answers I was getting were different.
Mm.
So that's know that I wouldn't be the person who we say oh, why that is not like that? It's supposed to be like this. I wouldn't get into an argument about it, but I will notice the difference. And then,
You'd make your own observations about the effect of
uh,
whatever you're doing.
eventually incorporate things because I think that's one of my style of knowledge. With time, I incorporate things, and even things that I may think at this time they are wrong, or whatever they are not, they don't make sense. Then I still keep them with me, and then through the time, I'm actually able to see the other side and they incorporate that kind
Do-
of knowledge.
Dr. Iacobello, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is even with medical orgone therapy, some people can get a sense of this is what medical orgone therapy is, but therapy with you may be different than therapy with me because you are different than me, and your way of connecting with patients may be different, and there is not some black and white mechanical way to do therapy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. It's part of it too, and that leads to the other struggle. In some way, one of the struggles that has been present, I think, through my professional career now, has been the struggle of how to adjust my idea of what therapy should be like and how it should be done and what really happens in reality. And that's I think that problem is complicated by the fact mostly that because psychiatry has changed so much in the last 30 years in this country, and also therapy has changed so much and has lost the position it used to have in psychiatry. So I have faced that challenge
Are,
of,
are you referring to how, for instance, counselors, psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists are all doing therapy and they're not on the same page?
yeah, right, or the way, they are treating patients nowadays. So when I came in, to the United States, the demise of psychotherapy was starting, but I still had a training that was psychodynamic, and I also had my experience on my own therapy. So I built my idea of how you work with patients and how you do therapy. But then I had to confront it with what was really happening in the field, where prescribing medications had become the main tool psychiatrists would use, and that also was the main thing that the psychiatrist would be asked. So then I found here this challenge. Now again, well, now I can do therapy. I'm a therapist, but now there is no interest in therapy. Psychiatry has moved into a different direction. So this challenge has been present throughout, is still present throughout my career.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Patients that this may happen to you too. They'll call assuming they need a medicine or thinking they need a change in their medicine, and they may start working, and they may realize then that therapy can be a benefit to them, but the reason they come to you as a psychiatrist is thinking they need some kind of tweak or change in their medicine or a new one or so forth.
Right, right.
So, Dr. Iacobello, it's clear how important Reich's work was to you and how hard you worked to get to the point of learning more about orgonomy and medical orgone treatment and the work that you put in to be able to learn it yourself and then practice it. I was hoping to hear more. What is it that really resonated with you? How was it that the work connected with you that drove you so strongly to get where you are today?
There were two aspects that uh, struck me about the Reich work and moved me to to work toward pursuing becoming a therapist. I think that the first one was personal. I felt that what Reich was talking about and the cases he was presenting in his books resonated with me very much. I recognized those problems and those strivings in myself. And there was the fact that I still was an adolescent, and I was dealing with a lot of inhibitions and fears. I was struggling toward being able to reach a love life and to have happiness in my personal life, and it was a very difficult time. I felt that the therapy could help me to overcome my blocks and my inhibitions and fears. And also, I felt that that will help me to feel more and get in touch with my deeper feeling, as well as with nature and with other people around me. With that, because of my general interest, I felt that Reich work was the only one that I knew that could provide mankind a way out of the mess where we were, a way out of all the problems and the misery and the social conflict that we were living. You know, I want to remember that earlier on I talked about my growing up in the socialist communist movement in Italy. So, and while at the same time I had been reading the work of Freud. So I found myself with the impact, the difficult situation that, you know, if man was as sick as described by Freud, there was no hope for mankind to achieve a society where there is peace and there is harmony for everybody. In fact, Freud's book, the one on the, I don't remember now how is the English title of the book. I think is Civilization and its Discontent, was a very pessimistic book because it didn't leave any hope to man to ever reach happiness. So Reich work was a solution in some way, because the main thing, Reich was able to solve the problem of masochism. With the work of masochism, Reich showed that masochism is not the result of a death instinct, but is the result of the suppression and perversion of natural impulses in men. So I felt that was such a great solution. It would give a great hope to mankind to achieve a state of harmony and happiness. And because I was very socially motivated, so that's pushed me to apply myself to be able to work toward that goals. Of course, personally, I hoped that with the therapy, when I would have been able to be in therapy, that would have helped me very much to overcome my anxiety, my fears, and my inhibitions, because I think that was what I mostly was dealing with.
That's very moving to hear. It sounds like what I'm hearing from you is there was part of you that was very much connected with nature and the people around you, but you were aware that there was something that was keeping you from feeling as connected or as satisfied as you felt you could be. But also, it seemed that you started to realize that politics wasn't the solution, and there was some truth in what Freud was saying, but it was incomplete, and that completion you found in Reich's work, in the solution of how to handle things emotionally and how to solve emotions, the emotional problem of human beings, and how they relate to each other socially.
Yeah, I think that's very well summarized, Dr. Burritt, because I will see what people were like. You know, the misery and the dishonesty, the desire for power and control other people, the egoism. So I felt that Reich's work was pointing to a solution for those problems. But also there was the experience of reading Reich's work and really feeling any deep feelings and feeling a deep contact with nature, with myself. Because I always have had the experience that learning has been a very stimulating experience for me, and the experience of coming in contact with something has made me having good feelings. Even if I was studying classical medicine, learning was very stimulating. So I think all that must have given me the motivation and the strength to pursue what the study eventually of medical orgonomy.
Mm.
And then, of course, I was very excited about the concept of orgone energy, this energy that was a mass-free energy that had the capacity to have positive effects in the human organism, the problem of the biogenesis, Reich work with the bions. All these were things I didn't have any direct experience. I had just to go with what I was reading, but I found it very exciting.
It really is amazing, and if one has any curiosity about the world and nature, it's almost impossible not to have a reaction to Reich's work and discussing the bions and biogenesis.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's very stimulating, and I always when I read Reich, I always wonder why people cannot see this, why people wouldn't be interested to know more.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Iacobello.
Welcome, Dr. Burritt, and I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and to make this happen.
How do you feel after listening to Dr. Iacobello's journey? What do you think? I was impressed with his determination to follow the path that resonated with him despite the many obstacles in his way, and I feel fortunate to have him as a colleague and a mentor. Have you read any of Wilhelm Reich's many books? The Function of the Orgasm, The Mass Psychology of Fascism, The Murder of Christ? We are interested in your questions and comments, and I would love to hear your feedback. Send an email to aco@orgonomy.org. Stay tuned for our next episode, and we'd love to have you join us for one of our webinars. The best way to help the ACO spread its knowledge is by letting others know about us. I hope you share this podcast with your friends and family and let them know about our work. You can connect with us at orgonomy.org or adifferentkindofpsychiatry.com. I'm Dr. Chris Burritt. Thank you for listening to the A Different Kind of Psychiatry podcast with the ACO. Since 1968, the psychiatrists affiliated with the American College of Orgonomy have been helping patients discover greater satisfaction, health, and overall well-being in their lives. Whether patients suffer with mental illness, struggle with addiction, or feel unsatisfied with their work lives or relationships, medical orgone therapy as practiced by the physicians at the ACO offers a way forward, often without the use of medication.